Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and a happy new year. Happy 2015 to everyone. Whether you're listening here in the Cayman Islands or if you're listening overseas via the web, I want to welcome you to For the Record this morning. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by Radio Cayman's management and staff, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I was your host last year, 2014, and I trust I will be your host again throughout 2015, with some breaks, of course. Plan on doing some cycling, heading off to Cuba sometime early year as well, do our annual Cuba ride, and do some other things as well. But I plan on being your host for the entire 2015, if the Lord wills that should be the case. I want to remind you that we have the beautiful Miss Susan Watson, who is in the control room playing that beautiful music. You heard Lucky Dube just before. So unfortunate how he died, someone trying to steal his car, his vehicle. I remember when he came to the Cayman Islands, I was part of a group that actually brought Lucky Dube, to the Cayman Islands as well. Extremely good artist, promising, really, really promising. Of course, he liked to imitate Bob Marley's style, and that was good in itself. But quite an artiste, Lucky Dube was. So, Miss Susan, who plays that beautiful music for us, she's right here with us again this morning. Also, and I have Mr. Christopher Saunders, who's with me again this morning as well. And if you thought that he was a regular in 2014, he may be a regular in 2015. And our agent, Mr. Graham Rankin, is working, on Mr. Steve Macfield. We had some communications issues overnight with Mr. Steve Macfield, so we're still trying to get on to him. And if he's still able, he will join us in the studio at some point in time this morning, because we don't want to miss the historical perspective that we always get on this show, as well. And you remember we have government TV, with us also. They're the ones who are responsible for bringing the video and the audio to you in your homes, on your television sets as well. And we can't forget the entire staff of Radio Cayman, who are certainly, quite dedicated to their jobs. And you heard, over the holiday period, Radio Cayman was still pumping, still going. Only one little issue that I would have had with that is the news. We kept getting the same news over and over for the latter part of the holiday. And while news was still occurring, maybe not in Cayman, even though some news was occurring here as well. It was occurring overseas as well, internationally. And that's my only criticism that I have of the Radio Cayman over the holiday period. But this is your show, and Radio Cayman is your radio station. And in 2014, you heard the Honorable Premier reiterate the fact that Radio Cayman will not be privatized, will not be sold. It will remain your radio station, and we're going to operate like that. Whatever efficiencies need to take place with Radio Cayman, I'm sure those will be addressed as well. But Radio Cayman is similar to the way I see Cayman Airways, that it is an integral and vital part of the Cayman Islands, and whatever it takes to retain it, we should do that. So, since it's your radio station and you have the ability to call in and talk about what you want to talk about as long as it is fit to be aired, you can call us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And if you don't want to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at For The Record. That is one word, For The Record, at CANDW.KY. I noticed on the roads this morning, not too many vehicles, not too much traffic, but despite the fact that there weren't too many, there was still some crazy drivers out there, as well. You just cannot eliminate those crazy drivers, those who are rushing to go nowhere. But it seems as if many people have been able to have the long weekend off. So rather than having to go back into work on Friday, they won't go back into work until Monday. But we promised you that For The Record would be on Friday morning, and here we are. So, Mr. Christopher Saunders, the regular on For The Record. I have to show you now how to control everything here, and then you can start hosting after a while as well.
No, I don't think they'll go that far.
But a happy New Year to you, even though I've said that probably about 6 or 7 times, since the New Year. We were together playing dominoes in the whole year, and then yesterday we were playing dominoes again, and some people got their New Year's present in the form of a 6 loud and nightcaps and everything else. But again, happy New Year to you and your family. All that is best, for you in 2015 and for your family. And again, thanks for being one of our regular guests on For The Record.
OC, thanks very much, and Happy New Year, Cayman. It's good to be here. As I was listening to you earlier, saying that you're looking to be the host, I guess, for the full year, I was saying to myself, not if you keep inviting me on. So we'll see what happens. But, so far, so good. These guys have been taking it in good strides, so I think that's great. It's a new year. It's a new start. Time for us to put, I guess, a new perspective on different things. Leave the bad issues of 2014 behind us, and hopefully this year will be a positive one for everyone. And may God continue to bless our islands.
Okay. I think we've told that we have one call already, so they're not wasting any time in getting to us. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For The Record. A happy 2015 and all the best to you and your family.
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy New Year. To all the Cayman Islands, this is number one from the block.
Hey, number one, how are you?
I'm listening to you quite clearly.
Good.
I heard you speaking about Radio Cayman earlier.
Yes, and we know you were a big fan of Radio Cayman, and we know if you were a rich person, you would be our benefactor.
If I was a rich person, I would buy it out and still keep it going. Same way. But I just want to make my voice be heard. Cayman Island government, I don't care whichever side win, who is in, it could be the Queen of England. Don't ever shut down Radio Cayman. That is where we get our sources from. When others are gone, we can depend on Radio Cayman. Okay, sir?
That is correct. The best station on the island.
Well, I can say that when it comes to 24-hour service, it is something that is really dependable. Our two, what would you call it, channels then?
Sorry?
You have Breeze and
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we have the additional ones as well.
Yeah.
And the music on Radio Cayman,
Yeah.
if you're a music lover, you can't beat it.
Many times when things are being talked on different things, I don't listen. I just go to that.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So I said, Cayman Island government, whoever is in, don't even think about shutting down Radio Cayman. And Caymanians, if they got the guts and they start to do it, get up and go stand up in front of Radio Cayman and tell them if a man come. Okay? Have a good day to all of you and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you very much, number one. Thank you. You have a great day and a great year as well.
I tell you what, as a member of the other team, I can safely say that the other team shares the same view that this radio station definitely serves a very vital purpose to the Cayman Islands. So I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon.
Nope, definitely not. Let's go to my favorite part of the show, almost. Looking at the Caymanian Compass and their year in review, which they will continue to do. An article again on Captain Marvin, and I know that you have something that you want to speak in relation to that as well, Chris. We look at their editorial, and they have pointed out some of the things that they will continue to harp upon. Says a year and a half after government members pledged to the people in their election campaigns that they had a solution to Cayman's waste disposal problem, we now know that they didn't. Several landfill conflagrations later, we are back in the committee and consultants stage, quote unquote, committee and consultant stage. So they're going to be focusing on the landfill, Georgetown landfill, education, business and economic prosperity, responsible and accountable media. When we look at business and business, the economy and prosperity, it says, given the massive cost of maintaining Cayman's existing government structure, which includes more than 6,000 public workers serving our tiny population of 55,000. The only viable path to our country's economy is one of significant sustainable growth. The other alternative of privatization and drastically reducing the size and expense of the public sector, as recommended by the Ernst & Young report, appears to be politically stillborn. Cayman's economy was built on a foundation of entrepreneurship, self-reliance, an attractive no direct tax platform, and importantly, minimal government interference in the private sector. Both business and government prided themselves in a partnership that resulted in the economic miracle that became the envy of every other country in the region. This newspaper will continue to advocate for a return to the cooperation and free market principles that led to the unprecedented prosperity enjoyed by the people of these islands. Small but effective government, limited regulation, enlightened immigration policy, and importantly, leaders who offer a message of social harmony and integration, not of victimization and division. What we find that they have, again, left out in this in their quest for business, for the business and the economic prosperity of the Cayman Islands is, yes, with those 55,000 people that we have in terms of our population, that we're seeing more and more persons falling. If we had a poverty level, a poverty line, then many people have fallen below that poverty line and doesn't address it here. What they also fail to realize that the Cayman Islands of the past was one where we looked after each other. Now we see children putting their family, their elderly parents into nursing homes, into rest homes, rather than having them enjoy the remainder of their lives at home. So we're no longer the caring country that we used to be in terms of taking care of each other. And some of that may not be the people's fault. They may be under so much pressure themselves in terms of some living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet, that it becomes extremely difficult, for them to do that. And that one of the things that I want to concentrate on, and for the record, is again seeing what solutions can be arrived at to address the needs of those who are more vulnerable in our society, those who need, because those that have continued to want and want and want and want more, and those that need can't even get the basic stuff that they needed. Look, 10 years ago in the Cayman Islands, you didn't have people having to worry about their electricity being cut off. No, it was totally unheard of. So we need to look and ask the question, why is it happening now? Why in the Cayman Islands is it happening now when we appear to be so much more prosperous? Why is that happening, Chris? So again, they need to address that. And then this one is interesting. They talk about responsible and accountable media. See, at the Compass, we believe in a responsible free press, uncowed and undeterred by commercial influences or political pressures. We will continue a practice of separating opinion and commentary columns which appear on the pages from news articles which appear throughout the newspaper. Likewise, we welcome readers' opinions in our letters to the editor column and on our website, blah, blah, blah. But we want them to be transparent because we want to show the true ownership of the Caymanian Compass to be shown to us. The owners, current owners, say that they are the one and only owners of the newspaper, and just convince us of that. It shouldn't take much, to do that as well. So they're going to focus, and I like what, I don't know if this is just the way that they typed everything, but the government landfill is on the top of their list, at least the way they have it in the editorial. And why is that so important to the Caymanian Compass, the Georgetown landfill? More important to them than the people, of the Cayman Islands. People of the Cayman Islands decided that the landfill was going to be where it is now. That was decided. Those who came later and got themselves in the, in the wind of the landfill, they came later. When we decided to put it there, most of them weren't there. Mm-hmm. They weren't there at that point in time. So that's where we decided that it's going to be. And I believe, and we know that Minister Borden's position on it was that it certainly wasn't going to be in Borden Town. And it seems as if the general consensus is that it should remain where it is. We will have satellite sites in other districts, but it should remain where it is. And if we have to go to a referendum on that one, maybe we should as well. Of course, they will say that the deck is stacked on that because too many people in 7 Mile Beach area can necessarily vote, so we could outvote them. But hey, if we have to go to a referendum on it, maybe we should. But Chris, the article on Captain Marvin, and you want to tell our listeners what was done in honor of Captain Marvin yesterday as well, I believe it was.
Yeah, I was just going through on my Facebook page last night, and I noticed a tribute from the cruise ships where I think they did that, where they honked their horns kind of thing. Out of respect for, I think, about 4 or 5 cruise ships, and it was beautiful. I really wish I knew of it in advance. I most definitely would have gone out in town just to have listened to that. But I think for such international cruise lines to be in Cayman and pay such respect to one of our fallen son of the soil, I think it says exactly where he stands amongst that industry. And, again, my condolences go to Captain Eugene and his family, and to everyone in Cayman who has suffered from this great loss. But, it's kind of weird, and it's... I don't know if it's providence to some extent where last night when preparing for the show, I actually took up the PPM's manifesto because ultimately, I mean, the question is what would have been the government priorities for this year? And going through the PPM's manifesto, it kind of really, to some extent, I was a little bit sad, and I tell you why. After I read it again, I mean, I read it during the 2013 campaign, and going back through it again last night, I realized something. I mean, and this is something I've said over and over. Between 1988 and 2013, we have had 7 elections. We have changed the government 6 times. Since the start of this millennium, we have had 4 elections and we've changed the government every single time. And I can make this prediction right now that this government, come 2017, will also be changed. I looked at their manifesto.
At least you said it different than the Jordanian the other day. Say he wanted to see them.
No. But and the reason is, I think on page 2 of the PPM manifesto, where the party leader, Alan McLaughlin, said that leadership matters, and he's perfectly right. Leadership does matter. In the next 5 months, this government will be halfway through their term, and literally no tangible, credible achievements that they can claim to be their own. And I say claim to be their own because the financial position that they're in right now was actually something that was given to them from the previous government. So, and I can tell you, Mr. Bush is prepared to go and take his credit for it because he took his licks for it too. And the next year after that would pretty much be the last year, and then the year after that is an election year where you're going to see the scurrying of activities and everything to get done. And when I look back at their manifesto, I mean, and I'm really and truly hoping that what I'm about to list isn't their own priorities, but I mean, starting off in terms of just a breakout. One, strengthening and stabilizing the economy, taking care of the financial services industry, taking care of the tourism industry, taking care of small businesses, encouraging new pillar industries, improving immigration and work permit systems, building the necessary infrastructure, revitalization of the Georgetown City Center, creating new jobs, cost of living, better management of government finances, and our relationship with DART. Now, that's the relationship with DART in terms of their action plan was all the way at the bottom, the better management of government finances. I mean, I can see that not being a priority because, I mean, a lot of that was done before. Cost of living, create new jobs. These are the stuff at the bottom. You know what I mean? And the sad thing about it is...
Are they placed in order of priority? Or
well, that's why I say I'm really and truly hoping.
Uh-huh.
And the thing about it is, I think somewhere along the line, both the politician and leadership in this country, and the politicians have to take the blame. I mean, I'm not going to sit back and say that the problem that this country has is squarely on the present PPM government. Yes, they have contributed a lot to it, especially during the 05-09 term, where they pretty much like just literally bankrupt the country. But it has to go back to many years, and I mean, I will say this much, and a lot of people may not like it, but then again, this is just who I am. When you look at the damage to this country that even the national team and their policies have done since the 90s, a lot of them is coming home to roost. And everyone got up in the campaign that they have the magic bullet solution to fix our problem. And the truth of the fact is they don't. They have completely forgotten the purpose of government and the purpose of an economy. The purpose of an economy is simple. It's to raise the standard of living for everybody.
Everyone. Mm-hmm.
That is the purpose of an economy. When you look at government itself, people need to remember that the form of government we have right now is still in its infancy stage, as much as it may be 240, 250 years old. Democracy itself is still young. Before that, it has been the monarchs and everybody going back. And if you look at what the government was organized to do, a government was organized in essence to protect life, protect liberty, and protect people's property.
Bring order into
the and system. It is government itself wasn't organized in use of force. I mean, in every democratic country around the world, the only person that can legally use force to achieve any means, including lethal, is the government. Nobody has that. I mean, those were the basic thing, but it goes back to, again, protect life, protect property, protect liberty. And when you look at what has been happening in Cayman, especially with the cost of living, where I can say to people right now unequivocally, we are not being protected by the government. Now, it's not just something for the people, because people also owns businesses, and the government has to protect them also. I mean,
Yeah, it has to be a balanced approach.
It is a balance, but because there are individuals behind these businesses. But when I look back again at the fuel issue, and the reason why that is something that's near and dear to me, is we run a consumption-based society. And it's fine for the compass and everyone else to get up and say we need more people. And on paper, they would be right. And the reason being, if you were to plot the government revenues and the government expenditures and the government population, this is something I've done and I can share it with you, along a linear path, you can realize that we're actually spending for a population of 63,000 people if you look at the government expenditure versus population and revenues and everything. And matter of fact, if you're coming tonight, I'll print it off and bring it to you. It's something that I actually did. And you can even see like the drop during Ivan. I mean, the government revenues and populations literally run on the same line.
Hand in hand.
Yeah. So when you sit back and you look in terms of what it is the government need to focus on, at the end of the day, people cannot just be working to pay people bills. Right now, a lot of people are just one paycheck away from being poor in this country. And going back again to the fuel issue, I looked at CUC's financial 2013 last night. CUC made 226 million US in revenues, of which 155 million was passed through. That was the fuel factor. And then 71 million from actually selling electricity. CUC provides an essential service in this country. It has pretty much one of the only last remaining monopolies that we have in this country. Yet, 71 million US, which was 50-something million CI a year in revenues, which for 27,000 people is not unrealistic. And that's one reason why I said that I've not given CUC a hard time. Now look at the fuel factor, 155 million. That's 130 million CI just on the fuel factor. Then when you take roughly around close to 50,000 cars that we have on this island, if you spend an average of $35 a week, you're talking about maybe another $90 million worth of money being spent on a car and gasoline. So now you're talking about 220 million CI. By the time you factor in Cayman Airways, private jets, the marine and the boats and everything, you're talking about an industry that is generating $250 million a year in revenues. On a population of 55,000 people, that is borderline criminality. I can't even find another word for it. And these are the kind of things that the government need to step in, protect people for, to start putting money back in people's pocket.
Exactly. We have one caller online, but Susan, we're a few minutes before the break. Go ahead and take the caller. Sure. Oh, the caller's left. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning is Mr. Christopher Saunders, and today is the 2nd of January 2015. So when you're writing those checks, remember now to put 2015 on it rather than 2014. I know some people will put 2014 just to make sure that the check doesn't go through. But you want to remember to do that. So we're going to go to a time check and then the news. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. You will have another hour and a half of us here on For the Record. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record on this Friday, January 2nd, 2015. Still a holiday for some, long holiday for some, but not here on For the Record because we're committed to bringing the conversation to you and getting you involved in the conversation as well. I want to remind you that our phone numbers, we have a toll-free number, 1-800-534-8255. We also have 949-8037, which is not a toll-free number, and the 949-6990. And you can also email us at For the Record. That's one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. And just listening to the news and then the advert by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, I want to say, just based on my own observations, and maybe some people may know more than I do, but it seems as if the number of road accidents in the Cayman Islands during the holiday season, that number has decreased considerably. I remember years ago when after Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, you could find the roadways littered with wrecked cars, and that is not happening anymore. And I want to congratulate the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, for that, because that is extremely, good. We have one caller online, and we're going to take two callers online, and we're going to take those callers. But before we do that, I want to welcome into the studio, and I promised you that he would be here, Mr. A. Steve McField, prominent local attorney. And whenever Chris can't host the show, then we'll have Mr. McField hosting the show whenever I'm not here, because they're becoming such regulars on For the Record. Mr. McField, good morning. Again, welcome to For the Record, and a Happy New Year to you, even though, we've exchanged those pleasantries already for the year.
Thank you, O.C., and good morning to you, and Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to Chris and his family, and to your family, and to all the Caymanian families. It was a pleasure being with you. Even up until the day before the last day of 2014. You remember we visited one of the icons in Cayman, Mr. We'll call him CB.
Yep.
And we had such pleasure talking with him. So I'm always happy to come on your show whenever you ask me. And as long as I know that you want me on your show, I'll never let you down.
Okay, and Graham, you're going to soon get your agent's license.
Yes.
You're going to soon get it. You have a couple more exams to pass before you get your agent's license. Okay, let's take those callers now. First caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and Happy New Year to you.
Good morning, O.C.
Good morning,
Mr.
Devil. How are you?
Sanders,
Morning,
Mr.
Happy New Year.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
I waited so long and I hung up and come back again, so I don't know what. Okay. Going to the front page of the paper. I am very not surprised, but discouraged that one of the biggest things that happened here in 2014 didn't hit the front page.
And
That the purchase of the robot that possibly saved a life and $1 million that the seafarers purchased for the HSA. That has never hit the front page. And that same machine or robot can take care of Ebola, that eliminating the health risk of doctors and staff.
Okay.
Washington, D.C. is in talks with the same company that we got that from now together for them.
Sorry, I wanted to ask whether or not it is now being fully utilized by the Health Services Authority.
Hopefully, in the near future soon, because there's a lot. I don't want to get into it, why there's not something, but hopefully we're getting closer to it. Okay?
That's good to hear.
Yes, we get closer to it. So we spent more than $250,000 on it and gave it to them. That the seamen, seafarers, the same people that started the banking industry, us, she was some of the allotments of money coming home that the government saved bank could not handle it, and Barclays opened their doors, and that's really something. But we being pushed in the back, we're not being recognized, and we the people that started the whole thing.
Okay, well, we have to make sure that we get you guys. I know Mr. McField is, involved with the seafarers now as well. He was telling me about, a boat that they discovered, that they found, and, that's going to be renovated and everything. So we have to ensure that we have representatives of the Seafarers Association on here so we can really ensure that the public hears your story and know exactly where you're coming from.
She's an honorable member, and she's the one that is agent for this, and she made sure it came to the Caribbean and it came on the islands first. We're the first one. Haiti got one, but that's only used for military purposes.
I see.
So we're first. And I would like for her If you need any more questions, her number, she told me I could give it to you.
Okay.
326-4844.
326-4844.
And I would like for her to come on the show sometime.
And that's Mrs.
to
Appleyard,
explain-
right? Carol Appleyard?
Appleyard.
Yeah, okay.
And Mr. Sanders, I think I heard you call my name somewhere down the line.
Don't recall, but go ahead.
Okay. I won't tell you now. Please put a hand to that. Say Hurricane Ivan. Get mad something. All over the place. I go to political meeting to talking about Ivan. Go to church to talking about Ivan. I was in a high power meeting the other day. We were talking about money. And they say Ivan carried the everybody looked at me. Please put a hand to that. Please.
Well, Devil, we just have one more question for you, Mr. Devil. Can you tell us what is in the future for 2015 on the good side rather than on the bad side, not the devil side, the good side?
The good side of the future for 2015, we're going to get this robot in full operation.
Right.
That one of the best thing health-wise you could do to this island. That, when they saved, you know whose life they saved, they was able to contact the specialist down, and he told them what kind of stroke it was, and they were able to give him the right medicine. You see, with that, they got the medicine, but they can't detect what kind of stroke, two different kind of stroke, and they can't detect it, and rather than them to give the wrong medicine and kill you, they put your ambulance and send you to Miami. So all that can be eliminated now from this.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, well, we want to thank you again for that information, and we committed to having you on, and we have Ms. Appleyard's number, so we will be getting in contact with her as well. Thank you, Mr. Ivan. Thank you very much, and have a great day, and I hope the tourist season is good for you.
First New Year. And a Merry Christmas, because that right round the corner.
Yep, not far away. We have one more caller online. Let's take that caller now. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and a happy 2015 to you and yours.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, and Happy New Year to you all and to your family and to all the people of the Cayman Islands.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a comment and a few questions.
Okay.
Yes, I was told that if the people of Jamaica and the government decided to become a British overseas territory again, that they were able to. And do you think it would help their economy? And do you think the people of Jamaica will be willing to forgive the UK for what happened in the past, which made them decide to go independent? And also, do you think the UK will be willing to accept that relationship again in order to stabilize Jamaica and to get it back to the place where they need to be to better their country?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Chris, I'm going to give you a first shot at that since, you lived in Jamaica for a while. And then Mr. McPhail, the historical perspective from, as far as colonialism is concerned, he can, bring that into the question. Quite a provocative question that he has raised there.
I will say this much. That's not going to happen.
No.
And one of the things that I know Jamaica is actually toying about with actively is actually moving to being a republic, replacing the Queen as the head of state.
Head of state, yes.
The challenge at Jamaica with that, and Portia Simpson, the Portia Simpson Miller, the current Prime Minister, and she had basically said that's one of the things she wanted to do. I think the only thing that's actually preventing Jamaica from moving to a republic, or one of the things really, is actually the cost. Because one of the things that they found out, just by even changing all insignias and everything, even the police uniforms and all of this stuff, would cost at least $5 million US thereabouts, just to go through and remove every single thing that relates to the Queen or the Queen as head of state. But no, that is not going to happen. And secondly, if you look back at the reasons why Jamaica went independent, most people fail to realize that Jamaica was the first, except for India that went after the Second World War, I think about 1947. Jamaica was actually the first in the 60s that actually went independent. Trinidad was 3 weeks later. And even Singapore was actually a year later after Jamaica. And a lot of people be surprised to know that Singapore actually copied a lot from Jamaica in terms of the constitution and everything else, because they saw that as one of the well-written documents. I think what has happened between Singapore and Jamaica since independence in itself has been a lesson for many historians, politicians, economists, you name it, as to why Singapore ended up where it is today as one of the world's richest economy, and where Jamaica is, bearing in mind that Singapore originally copied Jamaica's model. And what it actually came back to really and truly was investment in people. And if there's one thing I think that really sums up Jamaica post-independence, was a speech that Seaga gave when he was demitting office, I think a couple of years back. And what made that speech so profound was he was at that time the only legislator that was basically in Jamaica pre-independent and post-independent. And one of the very first speeches he gave was one entitled The Haves and the Haves Not. And a lot of people blamed him for creating a kind of social disharmony in Jamaica by pointing out the issues between the rich, the poor, and everything else. But at that time, he was a fairly young politician. And 43 years later, when he was demitting office, he took up the same speech. And he pretty much dusted off and being able to apply 43 years of wisdom to it. He pretty much summed up in that speech that the political leadership had failed Jamaica post-independence. And he looked at where the country was, where the country was at the time, where they're coming from, where they reached. And he went through, and the one thing in that speech that really stood out to me, and I will say it kind of impacted me a lot, and was when he looked at the investment in people factor. That the people who put Jamaica on the map, well, back then the Bob Marleys, today we have the Usain Bolts and so forth, were not people that the government invested in. I mean, I remember I did my school in Jamaica, and I remember I had to do common entrance, and at that time we had 40,000 students applying for 10,000 spots. And what I didn't realize is then from so early, 30,000 students were being marginalized. 75% of the students were being marginalized from having access to secondary education. And one of the things that came out of that speech that Sierra got raised was all of the money that they invested in primary education, secondary education, and tertiary education was literally wasted, and where the government missed the boat was invested in basic education, the first 7 years of a child's life. And when you go back and see where they fell down, like, bending the tree from a young. And that for me, when I go back and I look at even our lessons today, I mean, a 24, 25-year-old that goes in and robs a gas station or liquor store didn't become a criminal on the 24th, 25th birthday. You go back to those 7 years, you go back to the early years, you go back to the famous 90s, there were no gangs in the school kind of thing. And then directly you see where it is that we fall down. And there are a lot of lessons to be taken away from there.
And that's one of the things that next Friday, and I can sort of like prime our listening audience for this, is that we plan on having Mrs. Rena Jefferson and her partner on here to talk about early childhood education in the Cayman Islands. We have one caller online, but before we take that caller, I just want Mr. so we don't lose his train of thought, for Mr. Macfield to comment on the question that was posed by the caller.
I think, thank you, Ori. I think it would be a pipe dream at this stage to to think that Jamaicans would want to revert back toward their position, their pre-colonial position, and become a colonial become a colonial entity. The caller obviously don't know much about Jamaican history, and I would suggest that he start reading a lot of stuff. And for instance, I would suggest he just look at the Sharp rebellion in Montego Bay, where thousands of people were shot down by the British because they were marching, seeking more not autonomy, but more Christian more Christian methods to them because they were slaves and were treated real harshly, and they were not armed. They didn't have any machetes or any muskets and stuff. The British murdered thousands of them, and when you see today that Jamaica is moving towards joining the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, and to move away from the Privy Council, I mean they're not going back there, and much blood, much resentment has passed between the two entities. Jamaicans shed a lot of blood to be where they are, and you must remember that Jamaican had the most wicked system of slavery in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and the British still haven't apologized for
that,
slavery, and we're seeing talks about reparations now from it. And if you compare the African slave trade, and maybe there isn't a comparison, but if you look at the African slave trade and you look at the Holocaust, with the Jews, it was a Holocaust for black people, coming from Africa as well. And the same way that the Jewish people are able to get reparations, to get financial compensation for crimes against them, I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to get it, for slavery as well. You look at some of the big financial institutions, the Barclays banks, and the whole banking system. All of them in London, based on the slave trade.
And people say Jamaica is violent, but you have to understand history. For instance, Barbados is not as violent as Jamaica, and that is because the colonials educated the people in Barbados. They didn't want to stay there in the plantation. So what they did, they started the first college in the Western world, Codrington College, where they educated people how to run the businesses while they were absentee landlords. They didn't do that in Jamaica. And Jamaica, they didn't educate the masses of the people. And one friend told me about when he was a young boy in the 1950s and 60s and working for Grace Kennedy. He had passed his examination higher than any of the Chinese or the Syrians or the Lebanese people that were working with Grace Kennedy, and he was put in the back room. He was not seen by the public. Only the person of the higher caste was out front, and that was throughout Jamaica, throughout all the public and private sector of Jamaica that occurred. And so to talk about and try to read some good books. Try to read some good history of Jamaica, and you'll see that that although we in Cayman especially put them down, and I know that they have a lot of problems with crime and stuff, and that is a colonial legacy that will have to work its way out. But for where they have moved from 1962, they have moved a long way away from the United Kingdom and from England, and I don't think that will ever happen, especially not in my lifetime. I don't think I'll see that.
Exactly. Susan, our caller is still there. Caller, first of all, let me apologize for holding you on too long, but we had some. We wanted to clear that up, and I wanted to have both of my guests get an opportunity to give their contribution to the question that the caller posed. But I want to welcome you to For the Record and say a happy and prosperous 2015 to you and your family, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning, Miss Georgette. How are you?
Well, I tell you, this is the first time I've ever called your program, and had I imagined I was going to be waiting approximately, is it 10 or 15 minutes? I don't think I would have done it.
We got to make up for that in some way for you, Miss Georgette. I'm sorry.
all the comments that you and Mr. Chris and Mr. Maxfield, Steve, my good friend, made, they were very educational and interesting. But I think it would be a good idea when you have somebody on the line, if you could wait and do those comments later on.
Yes,
I'm not being critical.
Point well taken.
I'm just trying to be helpful.
Yeah, point well taken. And we apologize.
No, your apology accepted.
Thank you.
And I wish you and Mr. Maxfield and Mr. Chris and all your family members a most wonderful, blessed, healthy, and safe 2015. And all all the people on our free, beautiful island. And I have, I have a question. I've been told by someone who really knows that our hospital, our Georgetown Hospital, has no way of, I'm no medical person, but no way of test. If you have a pacemaker in your chest, Mr. Connor, there is no machine at our hospital to test that, to find out how the battery is working, if it's going down and soon need to be renewed. Is that really true?
I'm not sure, but we will make some calls to try to determine that. If it is true, I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, Mr. Connor, as the old saying goes, I practically have that from a horse's mouth, from someone who has a pacemaker. And there are several people on our island who have pacemakers. And that's very serious and very, very dangerous.
I know Mr. Saunders was on the board of the Health Services Authority at one point in time. So when you finish, Ms. Georgette, maybe he may have something on it.
Well, I'll be glad to hear his comment. And my last, this is a statement I would like to make. Our seafarers made Cayman what it is today. They formed the foundation on which our finances were founded, and our tourism. And I am sick and tired of hearing many people, some even had the nerve on the radio shows some time ago. I think they've stopped it now. Speaking disparagingly about our seamen.
Some of them want to rewrite history,
Anyway, they can't rewrite it for me because I'm 87 years old and I could tell them some tales that would blow their mind.
We know that. Yes,
So
definitely.
God bless you all and thanks for giving me this time.
Thank you, Ms. Georgia. Thank you for calling.
I'll be listening. I think this is the first time I've fully listened to your program.
Okay, well, we hope it won't be the last time. Thank you again, Ms. Georgette. You have a great day and a great year as well. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and my guests in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. Steve Macfield, prominent local attorney, and we have Mr. Christopher Saunders. And both of them are looking on because maybe at some point in time they will be hosting the show as well. So please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guests in the studio with me, Mr. A. Steve Macfield and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Christopher, earlier we were talking about the cost of fuel, and we were also talking about the profit margins in the Cayman Islands. And the way that you came across, some persons may have gotten the impression that you were talking about CUC in terms of its profits as opposed to the fuel suppliers in the Cayman Islands. So let's give you an opportunity to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks. No, what I was saying is I looked at CUC's 2013 financial statements, and on their financial statements, I had a pass-through number of roughly 151 million relating to the fuel cost, the fuel factor, which is roughly 130 million CI. And what I said was, if you look at the fact now that they've made 130 million selling to CUC, you have about another close to maybe 50,000 cars in Cayman. I think it's about maybe 48,000, if my memory serves right. Even if they're spending an average of $35 a week, you're talking about another $90 million a year in revenue. So from CUC, they're making 150. From the motorists, again, they're making about another 90 million. So you're talking about 220 million. And by the time you factor in, like, say, Cayman Airways, you factor in the Marine, and you know what I mean, and in private aircrafts and so forth, you're talking about two entities that is generating roughly around $250 million a year CI in revenues. Now, their cost base isn't that much in the sense of the amount of people that they employ and everything else. And on the island of 55,000 people, for any two entities thereabouts, they were making minimum $250 million a year in revenues. It's criminal. That is too much money to be making off 55,000 people. And going back to the point I was saying about the government in terms of protecting us, I mean, that is what a government was organized to do, to protect the people. And when you're looking at, going back again, even to the PPM's manifesto, when they're saying they will look to seek to lower the cost of living by reducing the cost of doing business in the Cayman Islands, rolling back the most harmful taxes that increase the cost of business, reducing the cost of diesel and therefore electricity, which affect households and businesses, improve efficiencies and therefore the cost of government provided services. People are going to be in for a shock next month when they realize that the government is going to give up a third of their revenues on diesel, and you're only going to see 2 or 4%. So the government is giving out 33% on diesel, but the consumers are only going to be seeing 2 or 4%. And if people realistically believe that it's the government duty that is driving the high cost of fuel, like some in the media would like you to believe, they're going to be sadly mistaken.
Interesting, highly interesting. We have 3 callers online, and we're going to try to take all of those callers before we go to the headline news at 9 o'clock. So let's, I'm told 2 callers now. So we're going to take those callers now. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan. Yes, sir.
Happy New Year to Mr. Chris and to my friend, Mr. Steve Max.
Happy New Year to you, Sir Mickey.
Happy New Year.
Interesting conversation. It's a pity you can't give me the time to really give an input as I was listening on there. Did you say 55,000 people, Mr. Sanders?
58,000. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that's people, you said?
Yeah, on the island, yeah. Population.
Right, population. No, I just wondered if you said people, because you should have said persons. No, that kind of money for a company, I don't see why not. There are many persons here in the financial world who are making millions of dollars a year. I'm sure you know a lot more about that world than I do. And anyway, that's just an aside. I'm glad my cousin, Miss Georgia, called because she's one of the 20 people who signed that famous letter.
That's right.
1948, 47. 3 of them are still alive, I believe. My wonderful cousin dear. I won't do all that now. Someone mentioned earlier on about the Jamaican people going back to being a colony.
Yeah, yes.
That would be the biggest mistake any country could have made in a millennium, not in a year, in a century, whatever. Obviously, many people don't know the history of, as you said, Mr. Maxfield, quite right. I'm glad here of what transpired in Jamaica between them and the colonial powers. And I'm glad you mentioned that Sam Sharp, who was the deacon, a slave, he was a deacon in all the churches. And the missionaries were there preaching abolition and trying to educate them. 172 missionaries were expelled by the British governor there, Lord Belmore, and after he had ordered the execution of, I think it was 538 Jamaican slaves, because of that simple rebellion called the Kensington Rebellion or the Christmas Rebellion. It was right before Christmas of 1831. And it actually affected one of the first 4 laws, or affected it, that was passed here in that first sitting on December 31st, 1831, because that was when they passed that law. One of the 4 laws passed in that sitting was that all men of the age of 16 to 60 must bear arms, must carry a gun. And you had to have an affidavit signed by a GP or a magistrate or whatever to prove that you didn't have any money to have a gun or didn't have a gun, and the government would provide you with one. And I think it was as a result of that. It was a needless bloodshed, because all happened was a slave girl lit a trash house on fire. And they knew that it was imminent, something should happen. And it caught the great Kensington Great House on fire, and it burnt it to the ground. And that was really when the governor stepped in and ordered those executions. And you're quite right, it could have been many more than the 538 officially reported. But Sam Sharp was one that was killed, and he was a deacon in the church. And then the governor expelled those missionaries who were preaching abolition and preaching and trying to educate the slaves. Another thing we must remember is that Jamaica's sugar plantations are huge. Am I still being able to be heard?
Yes. We're hearing you. Yeah. We're quiet. We're just listening to you. You.
Interrupt me anytime. I just it's that the huge size of them. We're talking about Barbados being much more educated. Yes, we know that. It is the most. It has the highest rate of literacy in the world. That's been in every Guinness Book of Records I can look at. I haven't checked the 2015 one. My niece Lisa and her husband so graciously gave me one every year. Because of the sizes too, it would be a major difference in them. You have one sugar estate in Jamaica plantation. At least I knew it up until several years ago. It was 47,000 acres. There are 2 towns inside of it. That's nearly the size of Grand Cayman. So you would need a lot of slaves to operate things like that. And many of those sugar plantations were owned by British members of parliament. And that's how they got their votes. They could literally buy their votes with the millions of pounds they were making. You have to understand the relationship, as Mr. Macfield said. And then in 1865, there was another horrendous incident called the Morant Bay Uprising.
That's right.
If 680-something persons were executed for that. They were no longer slaves. By the British governor here then, Lord Eyre, and he was made an earl for that. This is what he did there. And we have to, and George William Gordon, he was one executed, and also Paul Bogle. Gordon was the son of a slave and slave master. He was an educated man. He was a lawyer. Gordon Town named after him, and certain other things too. But you have to understand the relationship. When Jamaica was placed under direct rule and run under edict by the British governors there for 79 years until 1944, when they granted constitutional government, only because of the marches and demonstrations of who Lyndon Baines Johnson called the greatest politician the Western world has ever seen, Alexander Bustamante. Alexander Bustamante. And we must remember one thing too. I know I'm taking up time here.
And we have another caller on hold. So if you could wrap up for us, or you could call us back as well, because I think that call is on a paid call.
Yes, I'll call. Thank you for giving me the chance just to express that people need to study our history, and it should be taught in our schools properly. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. Please feel free to call back as well if you so wish. Let's take the other caller, Susan. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and apologies for keeping you waiting so long, but we like to give everyone their say. Caller, are you there?
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for being so patient.
Same to you. Yes, I have been waiting for quite a long time. I'd like to reply to the conversation you had a while ago with a lady about the pacemakers at the public hospital.
Great, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I can confirm that they do have a machine, because I've been going there for the past, I guess, from 2004 or so to have my pacemaker checked. So they do, and they have quite a capable lady that looks after this machine.
Excellent. That's
so that is a
great
confirmation
information.
of me, and I'm calling from Cayman Brack.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you like my name, I can give it to you if you want confirmation of a name. Right?
No, that's fine. You don't have to give it if you don't want. We don't necessarily require it. But that is good that you're able to confirm that. As well.
I do confirm that.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful New Year.
Thank you. You too. You do too as well. I'm wondering whether or not it might be a situation if that person may not be there at a particular time, maybe because of vacation or what. But we'll try to find that out as well. But we want to thank that caller for pointing that out to us, as well. I want to change pace a little bit, and I want to read portions of an email that I received from a young lady, and she talked about the fact that because that she is staying at the Cayman Islands Crisis Center because of domestic violence in her home, and she wants to discuss the issue of the need for respite services and full-time care for disabled children, because she also has a disabled child, and as a result of that, she has to support that child. She is challenged. She's at the risk of being unemployed with the responsibility of a disabled child. Moreover, she wants to maintain her life, her job, and ensure that her child is being well taken care of, and also wants to pursue her education and wants to ensure that the education of her child is taken care of as well. There are issues in terms of location of the father, and trying to get enforced orders in terms of him supporting the child, but she wants to discuss the issue of the need for respite services and full-time care for disabled children in the Cayman Islands. She wants to talk about transparency and the need for to hold men accountable for their responsibilities, because a lot of men can make children, but when it comes to supporting them, they don't do that as well. And again, this email highlights the need for intervention in the Cayman Islands, and again, those persons who are on the borderline, who are at risk, sometimes not necessarily because of the financial situation that they find themselves in, but because of their situation in general, which includes the financial part of it. But it isn't the financial situation that got them in there; it's the social issues that are first and foremost in their mind. And Mr. McPhail, you being involved in the legal system, would be able to comment on this as well.
Yeah, but it's at first it was really a social issue, because remember, Orit, we were, I would say, afraid of our disabled people. We hid them behind the doors. And I'll give you an example quickly. I had a good friend in West Bay. I'm not going to call his name. And I had known him for years. I'd been to sea with him. And many years ago, I went down to West Bay on a Christmas Eve, and I met him. And we had a few drinks together, and he asked me to give him a ride home. I drove him home. I didn't know where he lived. When I was growing up, we played cricket and games together, sports together. And I was surprised that when I got to his house, he had this beautiful sister who couldn't walk, and they had a board across the door, like to keep children from falling outside and stuff. And I says to him, "I didn't know you had a sister." He said, "Yeah, she's crippled and she can't walk and stuff." And we did that to our own selves. Is the lack of belief in who we are as a people. It's a sort of a subjugated view of yourself, and that carried over into the modern Cayman, and today politicians have and the educationists have not provided for those people. We sort of discard them and believe that they are a burden to us, and have not put any funds and the educational system together to be able to help them along and stuff like they do in other countries. I see where disabled people are doing tremendous things.
Yes, and they want to be as self-sufficient as possible.
Yes. And so it's our fault. But all right, if you don't help the people who are able, if you're not helping the people who are able, do you think that they are going to help the people who are disabled? I mean, logic will tell you that that's not going to happen, unless the people themselves get up and help themselves. And as I was coming here, I was talking about I was listening to what Chris was saying about the cost of living and stuff, and this is going to this taken on from disabled people. You know, we have always exploited our own people. We have done that for centuries. We have done that for generations. You take, for instance, Art, when the men went out to Mosquito Key, they never got paid, you know. They went on shares. And many of the men gave their lives trying to make that share, to get that share, to be able to put bread on the table for their children and to pay for the groceries that came out of the merchant class people's shops. And so what we're doing now, we have extended that exploitation to other people like Honduras and Philippines and stuff, where people are making 5 cents an hour, 10 cents an hour. We see where we can exploit them and make more profit for ourselves, and so we bring them here. We have the immigration system that allows us to bring them here by the thousands, and we bring them here and we pay them $3 US an hour, and to them that's a lot of money. They are rich in their own country. They can afford to send their children to school and to universities in their country, but that puts us out of work in this country, make us unemployed. And so, can you imagine if you can't get a job to maintain your own self, to maintain your household? How can you expect to maintain a child who's disabled?
You're going to pay that attention to them. Yeah,
It's a vicious circle. It is really the most absurd caricature of capitalism.
We have one caller online. Let's see if we can grab that caller before we go to the 9 o'clock news break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and happy and prosperous and healthy 2015 to you and your family.
Thank you, Mr. Connor, and the same to you and your family, sir.
Thank you.
This is Carrie Tibbetts. I just really want to address what that caller was talking about earlier with respect to enforcing maintenance for children by their court orders. One, the court system needs to actually be more proactive in that regard, because there are a lot of people here who are using their permanent residency status to acquire permanent residency, say, through their Caymanian children. If they were married and got divorced and they had a child of the marriage, they are applying for permanent residency, using the child as their reason for having to remain here, and then they have thousands of dollars outstanding in maintenance while they lavish away in this country, driving expensive cars, owning businesses, and not maintaining their child or their children. And that area needs to be enforced. There needs to be a name and shame wall go up on the judicial website with every person who has been given a court order that's behind in maintenance. And Immigration Permanent Residency Board need to address those deadbeat parents.
Especially if they have been granted permanent residence on the basis that they have Caymanian children, and I guess the assumption is that they're supporting them, but if they're not, then that should be maybe one reason why it should be revocable.
Thank you very much, because I recently highlighted one of these individuals, provided that documentation to immigration, and I don't think anything has been done to them. And that is sad, because if you're giving the powers that be the information that they can go and investigate when there's a situation like this, why are they not doing it? Is it a funding issue? And if it is, that is wrong, because we can't give a court order and not enforce it. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The courts need to have should be more proactive in that. If it's not covered, then they need to address that individual some way, take away their assets, not renew their trade and business licenses, their driver's licenses, their whatever the case may be. Even if people here in this country, for example, I know of thousands of people here in this country on work permits that owe landlords rent. They've damaged their property. They can't collect the money back, and immigration keeps approving another permit for them because they've got a term limit to 2023, and that makes no sense to me. If you have people in your community that are not being upstanding citizens, and your work permit application clearly defines you must be that person, you must have a impeccable character, a clean record in order to continue here and to be even granted work permit in the first instance and to continue as well, then why are we not addressing these issues? Their names are on the court list and civil registry listings. These individuals should be penalized. Their work permits should be revoked after the court case, and they're sent packing because that makes you a person with a questionable character in my society. We penalize our own Caymanians, but on the other hand, we roll out red carpets for expats and allow them to repeat their criminal activity, repeat their abuse in the community, and nobody addresses it.
And to thumb their noses at the judicial system as well. It shouldn't be allowed. Caller, I want to thank you. We have to rush off now to the news headlines, but please feel free to call back if you want to after the continue this conversation. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning, we have Mr. A. Steve Macfield and Mr. Christopher Saunders. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My guest in the studio with me, we have Mr. Steve Macfield, A. Steve Macfield, prominent local attorney, and Mr. Christopher Saunders, certified public accountant. Mr. Macfield, the last caller had an interesting solution in terms of those parents, mainly male parents, who are delinquent in terms of their support for children, and based on what she's saying, some of them actually ignoring court orders to pay. They are non-Caymanians, and they're reaping the benefits of this society, and at the same time not attending to their the responsibilities that they have as well.
All right. Children now have a better chance now of making it into the society under the new children's law that came into force several years ago, and only which is much harder and tougher than the usual maintenance law in the magistrate's court, because the children's law it deals with the grand court and children's issues, but I have been in the magistrate's court and I have been in the grand court on children's issues, and I don't really see that many people in the grand court and the summer court who are refusing to pay. Because if you refuse to pay, you're going to Northward. And one of the dilemma that the judges have is the fact that if you refuse to pay, and you send you to Northward, or if you can't pay the amount that the child's parents the mother insists that she wants to have. If you can't pay that amount, then there's a dilemma because if you send a payer to Northward, the person who's responsible for maintaining the child to Northward, then both the child and the mother suffers because there's no money coming in, and so the court has to balance both sides. There are some people who can't pay, because they're not making that amount of money that can support themselves, the children and the mother. Even in some matrimonial cases that I have been in, the person who gets a divorce and he has to split the assets with the other party. He really can't afford to be separated in a divorce situation like that, or in a common law situation, and he has to pay. And because he's not making that kind of money to support two households, it's very difficult for judges to be able to fashion sentences which hurts the person who's responsible for paying. Yeah. I've seen that happen,
and the judges try to be as pragmatic
as possible.
Right?
Exactly. But let me tell you, if a person before the court refuses to pay, I don't think that they would walk out of the court that day. if they refuse to pay, because they would certainly be in northward, because our family court system is really firm and cognizant of the fact that the children is first and paramount in that situation, and that they come first.
Okay. In one of the newspapers, calls? Okay, we have two callers. Let's take those callers now. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and a happy 2015 to you and yours.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and to Mr. Saunders and Mr. McField.
Happy New Year to you, ma'am.
Morning,
Thank
Happy
you
New
very
Year.
much. The dilemma of delinquency as far as maintenance from fathers, I guess in most cases, in a few instances, I have heard of mothers who have been, asked to make a contribution to the care and welfare of the children. However, I remember when I was in the House of Assembly, as at least Mr. Steve might recall, and maybe even Mr. Connor, I'm not sure if Mr. Saunders would know, but I worked really hard regarding family issues, children, spousal abuse, all those things.
Yes, definitely.
Those are the things that I focused on. But I recall the clerk of the courts at that time, I had a discussion with her, and she said, we have a problem here. We had a situation, she said, it happens all the time, but I have a situation where last week there was a father in here with 4 different mothers, 4 different women who had children for him. And his excuse was that he could not afford to maintain all of them. Anyway, long story short, what she decided on, and the court decided at that time, if you can't maintain those children, you have no right to be getting them, especially with 4 different women. You're leaving these women with this situation. So if you're not able to pay, then you go to court, because these children would be no worse off if you, or rather you go to jail. The children will be no worse off with you there in Northwood right now than they are now. You're not maintaining them, but you are going around fathering more children. So anyway, what the court, I guess, has to look at is what's happening as far as women, whether they are actually coming forward and making the complaint, whether they're coming to the court. Because I am aware at the same time, this lady from the court said that many of the mothers said, what's the use of bringing him to court? He has nothing to offer me, and in most instances, when the court, when the court would give orders that they were to pay X amount of dollars, they were not coming up with it. So it's fine line here between being able to do so and whether or not you really want to. So parents, mothers, have to go forward to the court and let the court decide whether or not this man is able to assist. And if he is not, then they have to make a decision as to what will happen.
Yeah, and of course, caller, we have to get to the root of the problem, which is that when it comes to, bearing, to having children, you have to make a conscious effort in terms, of what you're doing.
That's
because
correct.
It wasn't just the father that made that child as well.
It was the consent of the mother.
Exactly, unless it was a case of rape.
Exactly.
And then, of course, gentlemen, I realize, and I take into consideration exactly what you're saying. When I went there, it wasn't a whole lot that was required, but I was blessed that I got the support of all the men who were in the assembly at the time, and we got the amount to be doubled as far as what the court could award. And in addition to that, there had to be a means test, because if a person was able to pay more than the court said they were supposed to pay, then that was also taken into consideration, because they found out in some cases that there were men who were well able to pay, but were just simply careless. But mothers, young mothers, have to understand, and I guess they have to be educated, that these children can't suffer because you decide and God knows, we have to wonder sometimes what is going on. You know, you see a young mother with one child, she's having difficulty. She meets another man, there's another child, and then this goes on, and government is left with the burden of supporting these innocent children. So it's a subject that needs to be looked at very carefully, and
not necessarily any easy answers to it as well. Because, caller, one of the other things also, and we were discussing this off air in the studio here, is that when that financial support does go to the child, the father is actually able to pay to ensure that the child then gets the benefit of that. As you know, because when you look at situations, for instance, if there's more than one child in the family, more than one a different father, you know, for each one as well, that complicates it even more. So the important thing is to ensure that that child reaps the benefits, you know, of that as well. I'm told that we have 2 callers online, so we want to get through everyone before.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those points. Well, well articulated, for us as well.
Thank you.
Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Happy New Year to you and yours.
Sorry to call you back.
That's okay. Don't apologize. I'm the only one who needs to apologize, and that's when we keep you holding too long.
Extra special to Mr. New Year to Mr. McPhee.
Good. Happy New Year to you too, number one.
All right. So
Yes.
I just want to comment on what they were talking about with children a while ago. Something. This is not 1930. People can go and do what they want to do, but there's no need for children. They have different ways of doing different things. I am not going to use the words, but you all know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure the whole country knows. There's many ways to stop that. Okay? So it's not that you have to carry this on the court because you have this, you have that, you have the other.
But when they're there, when they're already there, if they're there, then we have to deal with the situation.
Right. That's a different thing if you're somebody divorced and they don't want to help with the children. Right. But what I'm talking about is outside.
More responsibility in terms of child rearing. Yeah, childbearing.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, number one, for that. Thank you very much. One more caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record, and Happy New Year to you and yours.
Hello.
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 Yes, sir. We're hearing you. Go right ahead.
Again, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning again, sir. Go right ahead.
Yeah. I just want to say first, Mr. Saunders, I wasn't trying to be critical of you when I talked about the persons and people issue. I'm just fulfilling a promise I made to my great brother-in-law, Jeff, who will be 86 years old tomorrow, who always cringes when he hears the English language being crushed or dissected.
Oh, you mean when you said about people as opposed to persons? Yeah, okay.
Because 1 people, 10 people, to say it's a plural word anyhow. It should be persons, and I do it all the while. I say people too. I appreciate all Mr. Saunders does add to your program. It's very valuable. It's knowledge here and all that. What I wanted to say and thank Mr. McPhee for being here very much. It's that the issue of the independence. A while ago with all that issue, you said the right thing. It takes 2 people to make a child. And people must be able to be responsible for their actions. Every one of us make mistakes. Sometimes make them every day. As a friend of mine says, history repeats itself, but of fools repeat history too. The issue is you must take responsibility for what you do. Yes, the child is there. It must be taken care of. And that's understood. All the more reason for my stand on direct income tax. There's some income tax that have been taken from his salary to set aside for that help here. The government would have it in their coffers. The issue that I was saying with Jamaica and independence, a lot of people have this fairy tale view of the empire, the British Empire. That doesn't exist anymore with this fairy tale queen one being head of this beautiful colonial system and a beautiful fairy tale empire. That doesn't exist. That was instilled in our minds as children all going to school. And it still continues in many people's minds, unfortunately. The reality is that doesn't exist at all. At all. There was a reason why England wanted these colonies. Jamaica is a huge island, very verdant, very, has a lot of resources and right now into mining and so forth. And a lot of what the very wealthy Jamaicans did when they found bauxite in Manchester here in St. Elizabeth and years to the westward there, they went and bought up the land from the poor farmers quite cheaply, and then they sold it back with tremendous profits and made them. I don't want to call names, but I can. And I worked for them in the later years, and that's how they made their monies too. A lot of people mightn't know that, but that's a fact. And it continues. It continues. We have to think of that beautiful Jamaican anthem, Eternal Father, bless our land. Raise us with thy mighty hand, keep us free from evil powers, and so forth. And, you know, be our leader, true defender. It moved from an anthem that only glorifies and only asks the blessings of God on one person only, not the country, not the people, and not the flag, but one person, into an anthem that asks for a blessing on everyone, on the land and all the people. A beautiful anthem, and that signifies the decision to do that. It signifies that decision to do that. We must always remember that the British governor, Peter Brown-Howe, Lord Sligo was his title, who brought that abolition document here on the 2nd of May 1835, first read out on the 3rd of May 1835 by Captain Pack, who had accompanied him here, that he said in that document that he thinks it's an injustice and an inconvenience to the slave owners to be deprived of the services of their Negroes. He said it, but he had to do that because he was given an edict, an order, which he couldn't refuse to do so, write a document and bring it here. We must remember that there are many here who are, I agree with what people say to a certain extent, but we should qualify it when we say high cost of living. High for whom? It's high for the thousands of people earning, just as Mr. Maxfield said, the little money. But for those who are earning the thousands and thousands of dollars a week and driving around in Porsches, Benzes, BMWs, and the Ferraris or whatever, it's not high at all, not for the standard of living they enjoy and the humongous salaries that they earn. Also, income tax, my friends, direct income tax.
Thank you.
Tax only.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, caller, for that. One more caller online. Caller, good morning. Welcome back to For the Record.
Good morning again, O.C.
Good morning again.
And the panel, you asked me if one thing I would like to see in
2015? Yeah, this year.
And I said that, but I want to tell you, we should put God first in everything we do. It might be a little confusing for you and the listening public what I am doing. Okay? I spent $1,000 trying to promote Paradise at this place, with the name Paradise. Souvenir T-shirt and a big sign out with Paradise on it. And you know what happened to me? My business went straight to hell. People did not want to hear about Paradise. I changed the name to the Devil's Hangout. And about 25 years ago, I went to Tampa for Halloween, and a girl bought me an outfit like what you see me wearing here. I brought it home with me, never had no intention of putting it on. And one day, like I had a brain wave or a brainstorm, why don't you put that on? I put it on and made such a hit, so I put it on regular. But every day I'm asking the Lord if I'm doing something that should be done. Make me know, he not make me know. He tell me to continue doing it, get him to hell, preach them or go to heaven. So that is my calling, I would have to say.
Yep.
My grandmother always said, Lord had a special mission for me, and here late, I'm wondering if that's the mission.
That's got to be special for for the devil to get him to heaven.
I should have been wrote off, and I'm still here. I got healed in 1958. 57, I had headache, now I had headache since, and I got healed arthritis. 10 years ago, Hornia to get rid of it, and that going to hell. So the Lord been good to me.
Great. Thank you. So all
listening public, and I keep up the good works.
Thank you very much. All the best again. Before we go, we only got about I only have about 5 minutes left. Story in Cayman News Service. Chris, 80% say no to beneficial ownership register. So there was a survey that took place in the Cayman Islands with that, and we have 80% of the public supporting that. Do we believe that at the end of the day that there's going to be some happy medium that's going to have to come about between the Cayman Islands and the UK, or is the government going to stick to their point that until and unless other jurisdictions do it, we are not going to be the guinea pigs, for this. But despite that, we heard MLA Ard McLean for the record on Wednesday point out that he intends to bring a private member's motion in relation to wanting legislation for the local media here, for them to have a registry to indicate to who their beneficial owners are.
Firstly, I saw it last night on CNS also, and I was trying to figure out who those which
the 20%?
Muppets with that 20%, other than people who could not really have Cayman best interests at heart from some standpoint. I think what Arden is doing, I think, is definitely useful. I would very much like to know specifically who are the owners behind some of these media houses, for sure. I mean, listen, some of these companies, when you buy them, they ain't cheap. And I can assure anybody, if some people went out, if I walk in tomorrow and I went and buy a supermarket, someone would be wondering where I got all that money from. And I guarantee you someone would have reported me to some agency, and I would have been investigated for either money laundering or something. So it's kind of really hypocritical to some extent that a person can come inside here, buy an entity, and all of a sudden no one checked to see where all this money came from. But yet, if it was a local, it would have been a different story. And I think it goes back to something that Mr. Macfield said earlier in terms of Caymanians not really believing in themselves and always allowing other people to some extent to come here and put us down. They were talking about the literacy rate in the world. Not many people realize that Cayman literacy rate, the world average is actually 84 point something percent. Cayman is actually 98.9%. Where females are actually at 99%, which is the same as in the US and the UK. And the males, I think, at 98.7%. So in a sense, the males are actually pulling down our literacy rate. But those are the kind of things that is really good about Cayman, and we don't speak about the stuff that are good here. Right now, we have over 20,000 people on work permits. These are people who have either left their families or brought their families here to make a better life. 20,000 people. This is a land of opportunities. Yet, our own people aren't being able to participate in that opportunities. And then they turn around and in some cases point their displeasure at the wrong area. I mean, I remember people coming and attacking like people from the Philippines. Here is a person who has left their family thousands of miles away to come here, probably sleep on the floor, share an apartment with many people, to put a roof on his family back home, put a roof over their heads and food on their table. That is as noble as what you can do as a person. Mm-hmm. But yet we will pick on the poor worker that's being exploited, but not picking on the person who's basically exploiting these workers. This is the kind of stuff in Cayman that we need to stop. This is what old people refer to as blessing blockers. The things that you do that will start bring bad things within your society. I mean, going back to what number one from the bracket raised also, we're talking about these deadbeat dads. I used to be a government auditor, and I can tell you, I remember once we were auditing the courts, and we came across the list of people who were pretty much paying into the courts. And I mean, some of the names on that list, you would be shocked. I mean, these were upright, upstanding citizens in society that basically went outside, had an outside child, married men, had an outside child, and literally had to be taken to court to support that child. I mean, there are so many things inside here that we do not sit back and deal with. I mean, Our people have been exploited for years by the merchant class. No one wants to say anything about it. There are race issues inside this country. No one wants to say anything about it. There are family members abusing other family members. I mean, I've been to homes where I've seen children born from other family members, and it's just quietly there. You know, I mean, there's so many things that are going on. We don't want to deal with it, and then but yet we become so hypocritical, and we complain about other people when they do it.
Mm-hmm. One of our listeners pointed out also that there are people who game the system as well, and we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of ensuring that the support that a parent receives that actually goes to the direct care of the child. Unless it's a divorce case where you ordered to not only support the children but support the divorced spouse as well, to ensure that it goes there. And this caller pointed out there are people who game the system where they get support from the government. They get support from Children and Family Services. They're provided with Cynical, and the parent is actually bringing money, giving them money directly in their hands, but they're not letting the government know that they're receiving that money, as well. So there are people who are gaming the system, and whether or not by gaming the system they're doing it for the benefit of a child, say a disabled child or whomever, or whether or not they're doing it towards their benefit. And we, in our discussion here again, talk about, some women who do receive support, and they're at the hairdresser every day, every week, and the nail parlor and stuff like that as well. So, again, it's one of those situations where in this particular case, Children and Family Services needs to be more diligent in terms, and not to say that they aren't, but probably more probing in terms of the support that's getting. But if the two parents are actually conspiring to defraud the system by saying, okay, I'm going to give you your money in your hand, but you go ahead and still get from the government as well, that should not be allowed to happen as well. But we're getting near to that time again, gentlemen, where time flies in here. I want to thank you all, but I want to also give you all an opportunity, to wrap up. I know we've jumped from subject to subject this morning, but we expected that because our callers always take us and pull us in various directions, and we need to go in the direction of our callers. And one thing I can say for both of you here, that whatever direction they shift in, you have the ability to comment, on it. So that's why it's, so great having you as guests on the show. So let me give Mr. Markfield the first opportunity, pop, and then Christopher, you afterwards.
What I would like to see is the country more unified, more unity in the country between all the people. I had a flagrant experience this last week. I was in a discussion with a friend of mine who lives abroad, and he came back, and we were talking about the disclosure of beneficial interests. And I was taking a pessimistic view about it, in the view that I believe that if the British government is not going to allow us to win, that they are going to pass OD, order and OOC order in council against us. And what I want to see is the government ministers and the opposition come together and stand firm on this, and let the chip fly where they may, and on this issue. Let us make this our stand for the future of the Cayman Islands. Let us say this is what was his name, Bush said, this is the line drawn in the sand.
Yeah.
Let us draw the line on the beach here and say this is where we stand. And let the British do what they want to do. And then we should be starting educating our people to the eventuality that we have to go someplace else.
Yes.
That's what we need to start doing with our people. But I was in this conversation with an expatriate person who I thought was had some intellectual intellectual capital, and I was saying to him, I said, if this trend continues about the beneficial disclosure interests, and we have to do that, I says to him, if you do not have Cayman status, you will not be able to stay here. Meaning that he would not have any work. He would have to go because he works in that system. And he jumped on me and says to me, that's why you don't like you don't like expatriates. And you know, stuff. And I was very shocked and taken aback because when I understood that he did not understand what I meant, what I was saying, and it goes to show that the little attention that they pay to the country in which they are in which they work and live and gain their future from, and I would like to see this void being bridged between those people who come, those people who are coming, and those people who are here, because we're all in this boat together. I remember writing a story one time, and I think it was one of the print media saying that we're all in this boat together. We all have oars. We're all in this boat together. And I would like to see us jump all in this boat together, rowing the same direction. In unison. Because if we don't do that, we won't survive. Because the disclosure of the beneficial interest matter is very, very serious. A lot of people don't understand it. When I try to explain it to the people who are not intellectually able, I try to break it down in layman terms, simple language, and then when they understand what I'm saying, they also are against it. Because if we don't stand together on this one, we're not going to survive this. We're not going to survive this. And people who are talking about Jamaica and are pointing their fingers about why they didn't survive, we will be in the same system. Because if we allow them to tear us apart, it will be every man for himself in the small island, and we won't survive.
So it's important in terms of the public education, not only for those persons in the financial services industry, but for the man on the street as well, because he has to know, when crunch time comes, what it's all about. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Macfield. Chris?
Thanks very much, OC, for having me on once again, and thanks for the many people who called in. One of the things I've noticed is that we spend a lot of time going back to what it used to be or what used to happen and everything else. I like to spend my time thinking about the future because that's actually where I intend to live. What this country really needs right now is bold leadership. We're just basically drifting, just running on inertia. People just getting up every day and just going through almost like no purpose. I mean, what are we here for? It can't be a situation where people are just working just to pay bills, or people just being one paycheck away from being bankrupt, being poor. A lot of people are struggling, a lot of people are challenging. And we don't have a direct tax system. We run a consumption-based society where basically the government makes its money from what people consume. We need to seriously start addressing the cost of living issue inside this country. I know many Caymanians right now are actually thinking about even going to the UK to live. A good friend of mine has already left and gone to the UK to live. I had a good friend of mine, he left, he's actually working in Florida now, took his family, everything is gone. Caymanians are no longer seeing this land as a land of opportunity. And I find it hard to believe that so many people can come here, see it as a land of opportunity, but our own people can't see it. So clearly it means that somewhere along the line, we as a people have failed in recognizing opportunities in our own countries. We look at all the prosperity, but yet it is not our people that are prospering with all the wealth that is in this country. And I was saying over and over, this is not about wealth distribution or anything like that, because I already said it many times. Not everyone can be rich, but my firm belief is that nobody needs to be poor. People don't have to be struggling like this. The issue of fuel is one of the quickest way to reducing cost of living in this country. The government really needs to step up and regulate the fuel. We're now seeing exactly how crooked these companies are. We're even with a 50% drop in the price of oil globally, we still can't get any relief in the pain or the plug. People should not be having a second mortgage in terms of paying the light bill, and in particular the fuel factor on the light bill. The government needs to step up, and the people need to start demanding that the government do something, because at the end of the day, if people cannot save for their retirements, you think we have issues with disabled children or people as it is? It means that people are either going to work until the day they die, or they will have to depend on the government in the later age. We look at the amount of money every year that's being spent on social services. It is a lot of money. When you look realistically at the amount of money that government is spending, subsidizing some of these issues, we need to deal with those issues.
And as you said, the truth will be borne out this month when we see, or maybe next month when you see the amount of reduction that you're going to see in your electricity bill.
Government is going to give up a third of their income on diesel. And all that's 33%. Now the people, not when I say the government, that is the people. People is giving out 33% and only getting back between 2 or 4%. You know what I mean? And the people need to start putting pressures on their MLAs, saying, listen guys, something needs to be done about these fuel companies. There's no way you should be making sales of 250 million upward CI on a population of 58,000 persons. I made sure I got that from a friend. But something is fundamentally wrong with that. CUC is only basically making $50-something million a year with a monopoly. And every single person needs CUC. That's what they're making from sales.
Yep.
And the person in the back is making over $250 million and counting.
And they wouldn't be here if they weren't making money.
Jesus have mercy.
That's for
So,
sure.
you know what? Put pressures on the your MLAs and tell them, let us start dealing with this fuel.
Yeah. The other day I talked about this house in the Cayman Palms area that and you guys cross there, the generator is going, all of the time. Again, an indication that person just can't afford the electricity bill. So that generator, for some reason, they're able to continue to get fuel, to run that generator, to provide electricity for them, which is sad. Again, those are the people that we have to take care of. But gentlemen, again, I want to thank you all very much for being on the show. Folks, I want to remind you that you've been listening to For the Record. I want to thank you for listening in as well, for allowing us into your homes, into your vehicles, and into your offices. Those of you who had to work today, like I said, based on the traffic this morning, it seems as if a lot of people have the long weekend off and enjoy whatever it is you do. If you're going to watch professional football, U.S. football, or if you're going to watch college football, I watched some last night, stayed up late last night watching some as well. Enjoy yourselves, but please be safe, and remember, 2015 is no different than 2014. We are still our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There will still be people who are less fortunate than we are. There will still be the need for you to extend a helping hand to them. Please do that. We need to really take care of the more vulnerable in our society, and we talked about them this morning. We talked about the elderly. We talked about our young children, especially the kids, infants, kids. We have our children's law. Let's make sure that it works. And we say to you, men out there, start to man up. If you can make them, support them. You should be proud to be able to support any child that you have, if you have the means of supporting them. And if you don't, then we say, and if you don't and you want to work, then we say to the government, provide the environment where businesses will be able to flourish. And we say to you employers, start to employ Caymanians. There should be no Caymanian in the Cayman Islands who wants to work, who should not be able to work, if we put Caymanians first and foremost and everyone else secondary. We're not saying deny others work, but take care of our own first. And we always leave you with the words of Mr. Bill Withers, and we want to thank Susan again for being so patient with us. She is a great employee of Radio Cayman. We want to thank her also. And we say to you, have a great 2015. Thank you.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now.